Dusk pressed gently on Maple House, the old Victorian standing crooked at the end of Waverly Lane in Massachusetts. Its windows, long blind, dust-thick, flared gold in the last light. Emma Brooks stood at her bedroom window, forehead pressed to the chilly glass, watching shadows stretch across the sleeping yard. Early spring meant bare branches rattling and the sharp scent of thawed earth. Inside, the house creaked and groaned, adjusting to its new family. Emma had only been here 2 days, but it already felt older than time. She was 8, quiet, always. Since the divorce, she had grown even smaller, shrinking from loud voices, quick glances, and the weight of her own nightmares. Her mom, Rachel, bustled with nervous energy, unpacking boxes, stacking old nursing textbooks, pretending not to worry about money. Caleb, her little brother, snored in the next room, clutching his stuffed bear. But tonight, something was different. Emma's room felt colder. She curled on the bed, knees to chest, listening as wind scraped a maple branch along the side of the house. Scritch, scritch, scritch. She tried to steady her breathing, tracing patterns in the wood floor with her toes. Then, under the wind, another sound, soft, desperate, muffled. It came from inside the wall. At first, Emma thought she imagined it. She pressed her ear to the faded wallpaper, heart slamming against her ribs. The sound came again, scratching, then a low, broken whimper. She jerked back, pulse pounding. Her body wanted to run, to hide, but curiosity tangled with fear, holding her in place. She whispered, "Hello?" Her voice shook. The scratching stopped. Silence pooled heavy. Emma pressed her ear closer, palms sweaty. There it was, a whimper, thin and hopeless. Something alive, something trapped. "Mom?" Emma called, voice rising. Rachel hurried in, eyes wide. "What is it, honey?" "There's something in the wall," Emma said. "It's crying." Rachel glanced at the wall, then at Emma. She managed a tired smile. "Old houses make weird noises, sweetheart. Pipes, maybe. Or a raccoon under the floor." Emma shook her head, but Rachel only tucked her in, kissed her hair, and whispered, "Try to sleep. Big day tomorrow." She flicked off the light. The door clicked shut. Emma lay in the darkness, the whimpering returning, softer but persistent. Her mind raced. Was it a puppy? A ghost? A hurt animal, desperate and alone? She pictured tiny claws scraping at darkness, a voice no one else could hear. Torn between fear and compassion, Emma whispered to the wall, "I'll help you. I promise." Her chest ached with wanting to believe she could. The hours crawled. At some point, a shadow flickered under her door, Caleb's nightlight blinking in the hall. Then the whimpering grew frantic, echoing her own heartbeat. Emma stayed up, blanket gripped tight, fighting the urge to cry out for her dad, for anyone who would believe her. The next morning, eyes gritty from lost sleep, Emma did the only thing she could. She found her colored pencils and drew what she'd heard. A black and tan German shepherd, eyes wide with fear, pressed into a wall of stone. A single word, written in shaky block letters beneath. Trapped. She slid the drawing across the breakfast table. Rachel, hair mussed, scanned it with a sigh. "That's very creative, Em. Maybe we can get you a puppy after we're settled, okay?" But Emma only stared at the wall, where a pair of desperate eyes seemed to stare back. She whispered again, so only she and the walls could hear, "I haven't forgotten. I'll come back." Emma's internal war, terror of the unknown versus the aching need to help something suffering, even if no one else believes her. The crushing loneliness as Rachel dismisses her fears. Emma feels invisible, but refuses to let go of her promise to the unseen creature. Emma's drawing, black and tan German shepherd, trapped in concrete, becomes the first piece of a mystery neither she nor her family can ignore for long. The sun was sharp and thin the next morning, filtering through dusty glass to paint long stripes across the kitchen floor. Emma barely tasted her cereal. The sounds from the wall echoed in her mind, urgent, desperate, too real to be ignored. Rachel, still convinced it was nothing, flipped pancakes with one hand while scrolling through her phone with the other. Caleb bounced his feet, oblivious, making a city of Legos on the table. Emma's drawing, the one with the black and tan shepherd, lay abandoned at Rachel's elbow. She stared at it, her stomach tight, gathering her courage. "Mom," Emma tried again, "please just listen. I know you think I'm making it up, but it's real. Something's stuck in there. What if it's dying?" Rachel hesitated, guilt shadowing her eyes. "Emma, honey, If it will make you feel better, I'll check. But we just moved in. There's probably nothing. It's not nothing, Emma's voice broke. Caleb looked up, surprised. The force in her words surprised Emma, too. If it was you in there, you'd want someone to help, right? Rachel's face softened. Okay, after school, we'll check. But Emma's anxiety gnawed at her all day. At school, she stared out the window, replaying the sound over and over, her fingers clenching her pencil until the wood nearly snapped. She sketched more, claws, eyes, a wall bricked up tight. When they returned home, Rachel hesitated at the foot of the stairs. Show me, Em. Her voice was tired, but something had shifted. Emma saw it in the tight set of her jaw. She led her mother to the wall. They pressed their ears close, listening. Only silence. I heard it, Emma whispered. Last night. It was real. Rachel frowned, running her hands along the wall. Let's check the basement. Maybe something got under the house? Emma's heart lurched. She hated the basement. The cold cement floor, the heavy scent of mildew and old paint. Rachel called in their neighbor, Mr. Delaney, a wiry old man with silver hair who owned more tools than anyone else on the block. He arrived with a flashlight and a crowbar, his eyebrows raised at Emma's story, but he didn't laugh. They searched. Rachel holding her breath, Emma clutching her sketchbook, Mr. Delaney poking at vents and floorboards. That's when Emma spotted it, a metal vent, loose and crooked, near the far wall. She knelt, fingers trembling, and pressed her ear to it. A faint, stuttering bark. Her eyes widened. It's here! I heard it! Mr. Delaney pried the vent open, shining his flashlight deep inside. A draft stirred the cobwebs. The wall behind the vent looked newer than the others, different bricks, mortar smeared unevenly. Rachel exchanged a look with the neighbor. Is it possible? Mr. Delaney nodded, face grim. Sometimes folks seal off old crawl spaces. But if you're right, Emma's breath came quick and shallow. She watched as the crowbar bit into the mortar, bricks grating against each other, dust clouding the air. It felt endless. With every brick pulled free, Emma's hope built and built, then crashed, terrified that they'd find nothing or something far worse. Suddenly, a terrible, pungent odor rushed out. Emma gagged, backing up. Mr. Delaney swore under his breath, working faster. At last, a hole wide enough appeared, revealing darkness. Rachel hesitated, but Emma ducked forward, ignoring the stink. She peered in and something moved, a glint of fur, a shape curled tight and trembling. It's a dog, Emma gasped. It's her! She's alive! Rachel's hand flew to her mouth. Oh my God! With shaking hands, Rachel and Mr. Delaney widened the opening. Emma crawled halfway in, her knees scraping concrete. The dog was barely more than a skeleton, her black and tan coat caked with filth. Her eyes, dull and frightened, darted to Emma, then away. It's okay, Emma whispered, tears blurring her vision. You're safe now. I found you. She inched closer, stretching out a trembling hand. The dog didn't move, but her tail thumped, weakly, uncertain. Emma's breath hitched. She reached farther, fingertips brushing greasy fur. I promise, you're not alone anymore. Rachel helped pull the dog out, cradling her gently in a blanket. Mr. Delaney's face was thunderstruck, silent. Emma sat on the cold cement, holding the dog's head in her lap, whispering, You're okay. You're safe. I promise. The animal's eyes flickered, as if searching Emma's face for truth, for hope. That's when they found them. Inside the cramped crawl space, half buried under rags and broken boards, were two things, a child's worn red shoe and a set of old dog tags. Emma picked them up, fingers numb. The tag was rusty, but the letters were clear. Nova. Emma looked at her mother. That's her name, she said softly, awed. The dog shivered, but when Emma said the name again, Nova. Her ears twitched and she pressed closer. Rachel brushed Emma's hair off her cheek. You did this, Em. You didn't give up. Mr. Delaney shook his head. Somebody wanted her hidden for good. Emma swallowed hard, cradling Nova. She knew, with a certainty that reached into her bones, that this was just the beginning. Nova's story, and whatever secrets Maple House still kept, were not done with them yet. Emma's relief and heartbreak are inseparable. She's overjoyed to save Nova, but devastated by the suffering the dog endured. She finds strength she didn't know she had, refusing to let fear stop her from crawling into the darkness. Nova responds only to Emma's touch, forging a bond born in terror and rescue. Rachel, overwhelmed with guilt, sees her daughter's empathy as something both powerful and unfamiliar. Inside the wall, they discover a child's old shoe and Nova's dog tag, physical proof that something or someone wanted Nova hidden and forgotten. The night was a living storm. Thunder cracked the sky over Maple House, shaking loose rain in sheets so heavy it turned the streetlights into foggy halos. Emma huddled in the back seat of Rachel's car, clutching Nova to her chest. The German Shepherd barely stirred, ribs sharp beneath Emma's trembling fingers, fur sticky with dried blood and dirt. Rachel drove fast, every pothole rattling Emma's bones. She glanced back again and again, white-knuckled on the steering wheel. "Keep her awake, Emma," Rachel called, voice pitched high with worry. "Just talk to her, baby. Keep her with us." Emma's throat was tight, but she nodded, stroking Nova's head with desperate gentleness. "You're okay, Nova. We're almost there, I promise. You're safe." Rain hammered the windows, hiding the world outside, and Emma whispered every word she could remember from her favorite stories. Lines about heroes finding their way home, about never giving up, about hope in the darkness. Caleb, wrapped in a blanket beside Emma, peered at the dog's sunken eyes and asked, "Will she die?" Emma flinched. "No, she can't. Not now." The animal hospital's sign glowed out of the dark, an island of light. Rachel pulled up crooked, leapt from the car, and shouted for help. Two vet techs raced out, carrying Nova in a soft stretcher, vanishing into the storm-lit building with Emma right on their heels. Inside, everything was white and bright and buzzing, overhead lights, antiseptic, the beep of monitors. Emma shrank against the waiting room wall, shivering, rainwater dripping off her hair. Rachel crouched beside her, soaked and shaking, her hand gripping Emma's knee so hard it hurt. "They'll take care of her," Rachel whispered, but her face betrayed her, pale, eyes red, lips pressed to keep from trembling. The hours crawled. Emma stared at the doors, listening to the storm batter the roof. Her mind wouldn't stop. What if she'd waited one more day? What if Nova had died in the dark? What if she'd never heard the whimpering, never listened? At midnight, a young vet in blue scrubs emerged. He knelt beside Emma, holding a damp, battered collar with the tag that read Nova. "She's not out of the woods yet," the vet said softly. "She's severely dehydrated, malnourished, and she's been hurt. But your dog, she's a fighter. She needs someone to stay with her tonight, someone she trusts." Rachel's voice shook. "Emma, do you want?" But Emma was already nodding, grabbing the collar, following the vet down long hallways to a kennel where Nova lay under warm blankets, an IV taped to her leg. Emma slid to the floor, cross-legged, close enough to touch Nova's muzzle. Rachel tried to coax her away, but Emma wouldn't budge. "Please, just a little while," she pleaded. Hours passed. Emma hummed lullabies her dad used to sing before he left, soft, low, the notes trembling with memory. She whispered secrets and promises, telling Nova she was loved, she was safe, that the monsters couldn't reach her anymore. The dog's breathing, fast and ragged at first, slowed. Each rise and fall of Nova's chest became steadier, stronger. Rachel watched from the doorway, exhaustion and guilt pulling at her features. She thought of all the times she'd dismissed Emma's fears, telling herself it was just the stress of divorce, the shock of moving, ordinary childhood worries. But tonight, Rachel saw a different truth. Emma's empathy wasn't something to fear or smother. It was a gift, one that had saved a life. In the stillness between thunderclaps, Rachel remembered her own father, how he'd told her to toughen up, to ignore the silly feelings that made her cry over lost animals or sad stories. She'd promised she wouldn't make the same mistakes with her kids. Yet here she was, watching her daughter comfort a dying dog, wishing she'd listened sooner. When the first gray streaks of dawn slipped under the door, Nova stirred and whined softly. Emma reached out, and Nova licked her hand, a tiny, trembling sign of trust. Emma smiled through her tears. "You're going to be okay," she whispered, "because I found you. And I'm not leaving." The vet returned, smiling gently. "She made it through the night. That's more than I hoped for." He tapped a folder. "We scanned her microchip, too. She belonged to a man named Evan Ramsey. Army vet, missing for 2 years. This dog, she's been through more than we can imagine." Emma traced the name on the folder with a fingertip. "Evan," she murmured. Was he looking for her? Or did someone hurt them both? Rachel squeezed Emma's shoulder. "We'll find out, sweetheart. We'll do right by both of them." As the rain slowed, Emma dozed off, head resting on Nova's side. Nova's breathing was steady, safe for now. Rachel sat beside them both, silent, her own nightmares eased by the sight of her daughter and the broken dog, healing together through nothing more than the promise of gentle hands and steadfast love. Outside, the storm finally broke, leaving the world washed clean and trembling with possibility. In the waiting room, Rachel filled out forms, foster application, medical releases, promise after promise. She caught herself thinking about Evan Ramsey, about the kind of pain that might make a person vanish and the kind of hope that could survive buried alive. But it was Emma's voice, sleepy, soft, and certain, that echoed in her mind. "You're safe now. I won't leave you." For the first time in years, Rachel believed it. Rachel's internal conflict, guilt over doubting Emma, shame at her own fear, and awe at her daughter's empathy, culminates as she realizes the true weight of listening to a child. Emma's bond with Nova deepens through the long night. Her lullabies and unwavering presence become the lifeline for a dog that has known nothing but betrayal and pain. Nova's microchip reveals she belonged to a missing Army veteran, Evan Ramsey, gone for 2 years, a secret that hints at deeper shadows within Maple House and beyond. Night pressed quietly against the old glass as Emma tiptoed back into her room, the air softer now with Nova beside her. The dog moved slowly, every motion cautious, but when Emma sank to the floor and patted the faded rug, Nova curled close, muzzle on Emma's knee. The quiet was different tonight, not empty, but full of hidden warmth. The house itself seemed to exhale, like it too had been holding its breath. A week had passed since Nova's rescue. The animal hospital cleared her for foster care, and the Brooks family welcomed her with a new collar and an old blanket by Emma's bed. Caleb, at first wary, soon delighted in sharing bits of his sandwiches and bouncing his squeaky ball down the hall for Nova to fetch. But the dog was different with Emma. Softer, more trusting, as if some secret language ran between them. Emma's nightmares faded, replaced by a hush that settled over the house each night when Nova stretched across her doorway, ears pricked for monsters Emma couldn't name. Sometimes Emma lay awake, staring into the gray ceiling, feeling a strange, grateful ache. She'd never had a friend like this, a friend who listened with her whole body, who needed Emma as much as Emma needed her. One night, rain whispered against the window. Emma, restless, slid to the floor, her knees drawn to her chest. She traced Nova's ribs with gentle fingers and whispered into the dark. "Do you ever wonder why people leave?" Nova's ears twitched, and Emma took that as a yes. "I used to think it was because of me. My dad left, and then my best friend moved away. I felt invisible, like maybe if I disappeared nobody would notice." Nova nudged Emma's hand, warm tongue flicking at her palm. Emma closed her eyes, letting the silence stretch. "You're the only one who really listens," she whispered. "Even Mom doesn't really hear me, not the real stuff. She's always tired, always busy. But you—" Emma pressed her forehead to Nova's, breathing in the dog's warm, earthy scent. "You see me, don't you?" Down the hall, Rachel stood just outside the door, unmoving. She'd been on her way to check on Emma, but the sound of her daughter's quiet voice held her still. The words ached, something both sharp and healing. For the first time, Rachel heard how lonely Emma had been, how heavy her quietness was. She stayed there, not daring to interrupt, a witness in the dark. Later, when Emma finally slept, Nova nestled beside her, tail curled to Emma's hip. The nightmares didn't come. Instead, Emma dreamed of running through sunlit woods, Nova at her side, laughter instead of screams echoing in her ears. In the weeks that followed, Nova grew stronger. Her coat thickened, her step lightened, but certain sounds, shouts from the TV, a slammed car door, footsteps in the attic, sent her shaking. Only Emma's voice soothed her, gentle and patient. Rachel noticed. One afternoon, as Nova cowered beneath the kitchen table during a thunderstorm, Rachel knelt beside her, offering treats and kind words. Nova only whined, shrinking away. But the moment Emma appeared, arms open, Nova dashed to her side, burying her head in Emma's chest. "She's bonded to you," Rachel said, both awed and unsettled. "I think you saved her life, Em." Emma shrugged, her cheeks pink. "She saved me, too." Rainy Saturdays brought new routines. Emma and Nova sat in the window seat, drawing or reading. Sometimes Nova would stare at the attic door, nose twitching. One afternoon, when the air felt thick with storm, Emma's curiosity got the best of her. The attic was a cave of old trunks, yellowed curtains, forgotten photo frames. Emma poked through the dust, searching for something. She didn't know what. Nova followed, hesitant but loyal, tail tucked. In one battered suitcase, Emma found a bundle of notebooks, spiral-bound, covers scarred with old army stickers. Rachel joined her, brushing dust from the journals. The handwriting inside was jagged, slanting across the page. They read together, Rachel's voice low. March 17th. Heard them outside again. Voices. I can't sleep. Nova knows something's wrong. I wish I could explain. April 2nd. Sometimes I think I'm losing my mind. Nova is all I trust. If anything happens to me, someone will find this. Someone has to. Emma glanced at her mom. Is this Evan? Nova's owner? Rachel nodded, throat tight. He must have lived here before us. He was struggling. They read on. Page after page, Evan wrote about shadows, about being watched, about trust slipping away. He wrote of Nova, her loyalty, her bravery, her warnings. He wrote about fear, about hiding things, about protecting those you love even when you can't protect yourself. The last entry was a shaky scrawl. If you're reading this, take care of Nova. She's more than a dog. She's my hope. Emma closed the journal gently. Nova pressed against her side as if she understood every word. We'll take care of you, Emma promised. We're not leaving. Emma's midnight confessions reveal a deep loneliness, the pain of feeling invisible, while Nova's unwavering presence brings her a sense of being seen and understood for the first time. Rachel, overhearing Emma's vulnerability, recognizes her own failures and the distance between them, igniting both guilt and a renewed determination to bridge the gap. Evan's journals, hidden in the attic, reveal the previous owner's PTSD and a growing paranoia that someone was out to get him, deepening the house's sense of mystery and tying Nova's trauma to a much larger story. Spring sharpened its teeth on Maple House, painting the air with the promise of green. Emma walked home from school, her backpack heavy with overdue library books, but her mind was somewhere else, trapped in the attic's faded words and Nova's uneasy dreams. She glanced at the German shepherd trotting beside her, nose close to the ground, muscles tense beneath her heeled coat. Every day Nova grew stronger, but some wounds ran deeper than scars. That night, as dusk slipped like water across the floorboards, Emma dreamed. In her sleep, she saw Nova again, barking frantically at a red door half buried in shadow. A puppy whimpered, men's voices shouted, footsteps thundered on metal stairs. Emma reached for the puppy, but her hand passed through the dream, powerless, as Nova howled, eyes wild with warning. Emma woke gasping, heart galloping. Nova whined and climbed onto her bed, curling close, her breath hot against Emma's wrist. It's just a dream, Emma whispered. But she wasn't sure if she was telling Nova or herself. The next day, as Emma and Caleb walked Nova through downtown, the old dog stiffened, her hackles prickling as they neared the river district. The hum of traffic, the oily smell of water, the clatter of empty cans. The place felt wrong, like a memory Emma couldn't name. Nova whimpered and pulled at the leash, desperate to turn back. People stared. Caleb frowned, uneasy. Maybe we should go home, he whispered. But Emma shook her head. She felt something pulling her forward, the same way she'd been pulled to the wall that first night. Nova strained toward an abandoned building, its windows shattered, a red door scrawled with graffiti. Emma's heart pounded. It was the door from her dream. She pulled a notebook from her backpack and sketched the door, hand shaking, shading in the peeling paint and the old metal lock. The image burned behind her eyes. That evening, at dinner, Emma slid the drawing across the table. This is where Nova wants to go. I dreamed about it. There's a puppy crying and men shouting and Nova's scared. Rachel frowned, glancing at the sketch. Honey, you're probably just worrying too much. Sometimes dreams are just dreams. No, Mom, please. Nova's trying to tell us something. What if there's really a puppy there? What if someone's hurt? Rachel hesitated, torn between comfort and truth. She looked at Nova, who stared at the paper, tail between her legs, whining softly. Okay, Rachel relented, uneasy. Tomorrow I'll call the police. We'll tell them what you saw. Emma's hope flickered. The next morning, Rachel dialed the local station, explaining her daughter's dream, the sketch, the dog's behavior. The officer on the other end sounded polite but dismissive. Probably just a stray that needs feeding. Kids imagine all kinds of things, especially after a move. We'll send a car by when we can. That night, Emma couldn't sleep. Nova paced the floor, tail low, eyes bright with worry. Rain drummed the window. Emma sat cross-legged on the rug, heart hammering. She stared at her drawing, at the red door, at the frantic lines she'd drawn to capture Nova's panic. She heard her mother's voice in her mind, tired, reassuring, uncertain. But something inside Emma burned. If nobody else would listen, she would have to act. She tiptoed down the hall, clutching Nova's collar, shoes in hand. She paused outside Rachel's room, breath shallow, listening for the steady rise and fall of sleep. Then she slipped out, Nova silent at her side. The night air was sharp, full of the muddy scent of thawing ground and distant river. They moved like ghosts through empty streets, Nova leading with her nose pressed to the wind. The river district was darker at midnight. Shadows pooled in every doorway. Nova dragged Emma to the red door, her body quivering with urgency. Emma crouched beside her, hands shaking, heart thudding against her ribs. From inside the building came a muffled cry, a sound so small and desperate that Emma almost missed it. Nova whimpered, pawing at the door. Emma pressed her ear to the rusted metal. The cry came again, soft, broken, the same sound that haunted her dreams. Emma's courage nearly failed. Her mind flashed with images of monsters, of men shouting, of being caught and punished. But then Nova nudged her hand, eyes shining with trust, and Emma straightened her spine. "We have to help," she whispered. As Emma searched for a way in, she heard footsteps echoing inside, heavy, impatient. Nova stiffened, her body tense, a low growl rumbling in her throat. Emma ducked behind a dumpster, pulling Nova close as two men emerged, arguing in harsh whispers. They slammed the door, the puppy's cries spiking before fading into silence. When the men disappeared down the street, Emma crept closer, fingers shaking as she pressed against the door. It was locked tight, but a broken window gaped above. Emma bit her lip, calculating. She could climb. She'd climb trees taller than this, brave darker places. Nova whined, nudging her, as if urging her to be brave. Emma scrambled through the window, Nova following with surprising agility for a dog so recently starved. Inside, the building was cold, stinking of urine and fear. In the corner, a battered cage rattled. A tiny puppy huddled inside, eyes wide, fur matted with blood. Emma's throat closed with fear and pity. She crawled toward the puppy, whispering, "Shh, it's okay. I'm here." Nova pressed close, growling low as footsteps sounded behind them. Someone returning. Emma froze, heart a wild drum. Nova bared her teeth, a warning in the darkness. Emma's determination, driven by dreams, empathy, and the deepening bond with Nova, overcomes her fear, leading her to risk everything to follow her instincts, even when adults dismiss her. Nova's agitation and trust in Emma create a silent partnership, the kind that forms in the crucible of shared trauma and hope. Together, they face the unknown, both terrified but unwilling to turn away from suffering. Emma and Nova discover a real crying puppy behind the red door, proving Emma's visions true and propelling them into a larger danger that the adults and even the authorities refuse to see. Midnight pressed hard against the river district. Black water, slick cobblestones, the abandoned factory looming like a wound under a broken streetlight. Emma's heart pounded so loud she was sure the whole world could hear it. Nova crouched low beside her, fur bristling, every muscle coiled tight as a drawn bow. The night stank of oil and wet brick. The distant hum of traffic faded into the silence of this forgotten corner, a place people hurried past and never spoke of. Emma's hands trembled as she gripped the edge of the shattered window. She had never snuck out at night before, never crossed a line so clearly drawn by her mother's rules. But the memory of the puppy's cries, Nova's haunted eyes, and the pounding truth of her own dreams made retreat impossible. She climbed through, glass biting her palm, and landed in the dark. Inside, the factory was a maze of shadow, rusted machinery, empty crates, walls tagged with the wild signatures of long-gone kids. The only light came from the high, grimy windows and the thin beam of Emma's flashlight. Her breath clouded the air. She reached for Nova, fingers finding the dog's collar, drawing courage from the steady warmth of her friend. "Stay close," she whispered, her voice almost lost in the gloom. Nova pressed against her thigh, guiding her toward the back, nose twitching, tail low. Every step brought a new sound, the drip of water, the distant scrape of metal, the frantic beat of Emma's heart. The puppy's cries echoed somewhere ahead, weak and desperate, threading through the dark like a rope pulling them forward. Emma's mind replayed every warning her mother had ever given her about strangers, about danger. But Nova moved with certainty, unafraid to face the things that had once terrified her. They found the red door halfway down a corridor lined with empty kennels and filthy straw. The paint was chipped, the handle wrapped in wire, a faded lock hanging loose. Nova pawed at the threshold, whining, eyes locked on Emma's. Together they pushed inside. The room was a nightmare. Cages stacked 3 high, the air thick with fear and rot. Shadows moved in the corners. Emma choked back a sob as her flashlight swept over the trembling forms of dogs, old and young, too many to count. In the nearest cage, a battered puppy shivered, fur matted, eyes impossibly round with terror. Emma's fear sharpened into action. She dropped to her knees, prying at the cage door. Nova circled, ears pinned, growling low. The puppy pressed itself against the back of the cage, crying out, a sound from Emma's dreams, raw and pleading. "Shh, shh," Emma whispered. "It's okay, I'm here." She forced the lock, scraping her knuckles. The door popped open and she scooped the puppy into her arms. It was lighter than a bundle of rags, shaking so hard Emma feared it would fall apart. Nova nosed the puppy gently, whining reassurance. Suddenly, footsteps thundered down the hall. Emma froze, clutching the puppy close. Nova growled, teeth bared, body planted between Emma and the door. The handle rattled, voices rose, angry, rough, too close. Panic clawed at Emma's chest. She ducked behind a crate, Nova wedged in front of her, the puppy muffled under Emma's jacket. Men stormed in, one tall, one thick-shouldered, both with hard eyes and harder fists. They cursed when they saw the cages, the open lock, the missing puppy. Emma pressed her face into Nova's fur, breath held tight. Nova's body trembled, but she didn't move, muscles coiled and ready. When one of the men moved toward the crate, Nova lunged, barking so savagely the men stumbled back. The smaller one cursed, swinging a heavy boot. Nova dodged, snapping at his heel, giving Emma just enough time to slip around the crate and crawl toward the door, puppy tucked against her chest. "Get that dog!" one man yelled. Nova stood her ground, blood streaming from a cut on her shoulder. She growled, snapping again, her body a shield. Emma's panic spiked. She couldn't leave Nova behind, but the puppy in her arms was limp, barely breathing. Nova looked back, locking eyes with Emma, a silent message. "Go." Emma bolted, ducking through the red door, feet flying over concrete. She heard Nova yelp, the men shouting, boots pounding. Then a crash, the sound of bodies colliding, barking and cursing tangled together. Emma burst through the shattered window, landing hard in the alley. She scrambled to her feet, clutching the puppy, breath burning in her chest. Seconds later, Nova tumbled through after her, bloody but alive. Emma sobbed in relief, wrapping her arms around the dog, puppy pressed between them. Nova licked Emma's face, her own sides heaving, eyes wild but clear. Together they staggered down the alley, Emma half carrying, half dragging Nova, the puppy whimpering softly. The city felt endless, the darkness alive with threats, but with every step Nova regained her strength, the puppy's cries growing weaker but steadier. They didn't stop until they reached the safety of a streetlight near the edge of downtown. Emma dropped to the curb, cradling the puppy. She glanced at its tag, a battered piece of brass engraved with a single word: hope. Tears filled Emma's eyes as Nova pressed against her, the puppy shivering between them. "We did it," she whispered, voice cracked and small. "We found hope." But as sirens wailed in the distance and shadows moved at the end of the street, Emma knew this wasn't the end. Somewhere behind them, dogs still cried in the dark. Trouble was coming, and now everyone would have to listen. Emma's terror and courage colliding as she risks everything for a helpless animal, her compassion outweighing her fear but not banishing it. Nova's selfless protection, bloodied, battered, but refusing to let Emma be harmed, cements a bond of trust that can't be broken no matter what happens next. The puppy's tag reads Hope. Emma and Nova have rescued more than a life. They've started a chain reaction, exposing something far darker at the heart of their town, and signaling that their fight is only beginning. The night wasn't done with Emma Brooks. She crouched beneath a flickering streetlight, cradling the puppy, Hope, Nova pressed tight against her leg. Every muscle in Emma's body trembled, not from cold, but from the fear and adrenaline burning through her veins. The city's distant sirens grew louder, closer, and she realized she'd left her phone on her pillow at home. How would anyone know where she was? Nova licked the salt from Emma's cheek, her own side streaked with blood. The dog's breath was shallow, but her gaze was fierce and alert, eyes darting to every passing shadow. Hope, tucked against Emma's chest, whimpered but did not cry out, a tiny, battered survivor. For a long moment, Emma hesitated. She wanted to run. She wanted her mom. She wanted to be anywhere but this rain-slicked street, with her knees scraped raw and her mind crowded with memories she'd never forget. But Nova nudged her hand, as if to say, keep going. Don't let go now. Far off, a car screeched. Emma turned, heart pounding, as Rachel's sedan slid to a stop at the curb, headlights glaring. Rachel tumbled out, wild-eyed and frantic, rain plastering her hair to her forehead. "Emma!" Rachel shouted, voice raw with relief and terror. "Emma, where? Oh my God, what happened?" She sprinted across the street, falling to her knees and pulling Emma, Nova, and Hope into her arms all at once. For a second, the whole world shrank to the circle of Rachel's embrace. "I'm sorry," Emma sobbed. "There were dogs. And men. Nova got hurt." Rachel clutched her tighter, tears and rain mixing. "You're safe. You're safe." Then finally Rachel saw the blood on Nova's shoulder, the limp puppy pressed between them, and the fear in her daughter's eyes. In the same moment, blue and red lights splashed across the brick and Rachel's phone buzzed in her pocket. She'd tracked Emma's location using the Find My Phone app, one of the few things she'd insisted on after the divorce. With shaking fingers, Rachel called the police again, breathless and desperate. "She's here! My daughter! She found something! Dogs, cages, men, please, you have to come now!" The wail of sirens multiplied. Police cars screamed around the corner, doors slamming open, officers fanning out with flashlights and shouts. Nova barked, weak but determined, as Emma pointed back toward the factory. "There, inside, the red door," Emma stammered, words tumbling over each other. "There are more dogs, I heard them." "Bad men!" Rachel pressed her hand over Emma's mouth, a silent apology, and told the nearest officer, "She's telling the truth. Please, hurry." Armed with Emma's drawing and her frantic description, officers stormed the factory. From outside, Emma could hear everything. The crash of boots, shouts echoing through metal halls, Nova's frantic whine as she struggled to her feet. Hope whimpered and licked Emma's chin. Minutes stretched impossibly thin. Emma's head spun with fear for Nova, for the puppy, for all the animals she'd glimpsed in those filthy cages. Rachel pulled her into her lap, rocking her gently, murmuring over and over, "It's over, sweetheart. You're safe now. It's over." But Emma wasn't sure she believed it. Not yet. At last, the doors banged open. Officers emerged carrying crate after crate of whimpering dogs, their eyes shining with confusion and hope. Some officers led a handcuffed man with a bloodied lip and torn shirt past Rachel's car. Emma recognized him, one of the men from the factory. He glared at her, but the officers dragged him away, cursing. An ambulance arrived. Paramedics wrapped Emma in a blanket and knelt beside Nova, checking her wounds. One paramedic smiled kindly at Emma, whispering, "She's brave. You're both heroes, you know." Emma only nodded, numb, watching as dog after dog was loaded into animal control vans. Some barked with joy, some whimpered, not daring to believe their suffering was really over. Through the rain, a little girl with tangled hair and haunted eyes stumbled from the factory, led by a police officer. Emma stared. The girl was maybe 6 or 7, thin and filthy but alive. She ran to Emma's side, clutching her arm. "You have Nova?" the girl cried. "Nova saved me too. She barked at them. She wouldn't let them hurt me." Emma blinked, realization crashing down. This was Sophie, the child she'd heard about only in rumors, who'd gone missing months ago. Rachel pulled Sophie close too, her arms overflowing with broken, rescued things. Police officers took statements. Emma stammered through tears, describing the red door, the cages, the puppy, the way Nova had fought to protect them. Sophie nodded fiercely, her hand locked with Emma's, telling anyone who would listen, "Nova protected all of us. She's a hero dog." Rain still fell, but now it felt different, softer, almost gentle, as if the whole world were sighing in relief. Hope dozed in Emma's arms, Nova leaned her head on Emma's knee, and Sophie clung to her side. Rachel knelt before Emma, her face lined with pride and guilt and something like awe. "You saved them, Em. All of them. I should have listened to you sooner. I'm so sorry." Emma looked down at Nova, at Hope, at Sophie, and then at her mom. "Sometimes," she said quietly, "you just have to believe someone, even when it sounds impossible." For the first time, Rachel truly listened, not just with her ears, but with her whole heart. Emma's fear and guilt mix with triumph as her mother finally sees her, holds her, and believes her. Their connection is raw and real in the chaos, both shaken, both changed. The appearance of Sophie, another wounded survivor, deepens the emotional stakes. She clings to Emma and Nova for comfort, forming a new kind of family in the aftermath. Police raid the building, rescuing 18 abused dogs and arresting the ringleaders. Sophie reveals Nova had protected her too, proving Nova's heroism extends beyond Emma's story and tying all the lost voices together. A week passed, and the world seemed to slow down, as if giving everyone a chance to breathe again. The scars from the River District raid were everywhere, in bruised skin, in nightmares, in the way Nova startled at loud noises, and Emma woke up gasping, fingers tangled in her blankets. But with the horror came a new kind of hope. Gentle, patient, unexpected. The Brooks house was different now. Light poured into every room, and the old walls seemed to hold their breath less tightly. Emma and Nova spent whole afternoons curled on the porch swing. The puppy, Hope, nestled between them. Nova's wounds healed slowly under Rachel's careful hands. Rachel became skilled at changing bandages, her gentle touch erasing some of the guilt she carried. Sometimes as she worked, Rachel would glance at Emma, really look at her, and Emma saw something new in her mother's eyes. Respect and a wonder that never quite faded. Hope, too, was learning how to trust again. When they first brought her home from the shelter, she shivered at every movement, flinched at every shadow, as if the world might close in on her all over again. But Nova lay beside her, patient and calm, showing her how to sleep in the sun, how to chase a ball, how to lean into a gentle hand and let it stay. When Emma approached, Hope would wag her tail, just once, shy and uncertain, but more each day. The family spent mornings at the animal shelter. Emma insisted on going, her hands small but steady, her voice calm and warm as she sat with other rescued dogs, letting them sniff her fingers and watch Nova's every move. Nova became Emma's partner, a therapy dog in training, offering comfort to the most frightened animals. Together, they showed the others what safety felt like. Hope followed their example, learning that trust wasn't a trick but a slow, shared promise. Sophie visited often, sometimes staying for days at a time. She was quieter than Emma, her eyes always watching, her laughter soft and sudden as a spring storm. She liked to sit on the porch steps, drawing with Emma in the sun, her pictures slowly shifting from jagged, broken lines to bright, hopeful colors. When Emma showed her how to braid friendship bracelets, Sophie whispered, "I never had a friend before you." They both looked at Nova, sprawled in the grass, and Hope, who snored in a sunbeam. "We all needed saving, didn't we?" Emma said, almost to herself. Rachel listened to their conversations, sometimes from the kitchen, sometimes sitting on the porch with a cup of tea. She marveled at the change in her daughter, at the way Emma's drawings filled with light and laughter instead of monsters and shadows. There were still bad dreams, still mornings when Emma was quiet, but the darkness no longer felt permanent. Nova, too, was changing. She flinched at sudden noises, sometimes hiding behind Emma's legs, but each night she crept onto Emma's bed and slept pressed against her side, breathing deep and slow. Hope curled up at Emma's feet, and Sophie would sometimes sneak in, sleeping in a sleeping bag by the bed, comforted by the steady rhythm of Nova's breathing. One afternoon, Rachel received a call from social services. Sophie's father had been arrested. Evidence from the factory and Sophie's own quiet testimony painting a story too terrible for any child to bear. The social worker's voice was gentle but firm. Sophie would be placed with a loving foster family, one who had a dog and a backyard and books in every room. The news hit Sophie hard. She spent her last night with the Brooks family curled up beside Emma and Nova, clutching Hope to her chest. Emma braided a new bracelet for her friend, colors chosen to match the sky at sunset. "Will you visit?" Sophie whispered. "Every week," Emma promised. "And we'll write. And you can come see Nova and Hope. We're family now, okay? No matter what." Sophie nodded, silent tears glistening on her cheeks. Nova nosed her hand, Hope licking her chin, and for a moment the pain of leaving faded under the weight of shared love. When the social worker came, Sophie left with a suitcase full of drawings, a new collar for her foster family's dog, and Emma's bracelet tied around her wrist. Emma watched her go, heart heavy but filled with pride. Days grew warmer. The shelter held a Second Chances event, and Emma was asked to share her story. She stood before a small crowd, her hands shaking, Nova and Hope at her feet, Rachel watching from the sidelines. Emma spoke softly but clearly about how she used to be afraid all the time, how Nova helped her feel brave, how Hope needed them too. Sometimes you don't need to fix someone, Emma said. Sometimes you just need to stay, to listen. That's how we heal. People clapped, and Emma blushed, but it was Nova nuzzling her hand and Hope licking her ankle that made her truly smile. That evening, Emma found Rachel on the porch, staring at the horizon. She climbed into her mother's lap, and they watched the sky darken together. "You proud of me?" Emma whispered, afraid to look up. Rachel hugged her tight. "You have no idea. You taught me how to listen, Em. You taught me how to be brave." Nova barked, Hope yawned, and for the first time, Emma felt, deep in her bones, that they were all exactly where they were supposed to be. Emma's and Sophie's growing bond shows how survivors, animal and human, can heal each other through simple, daily acts of kindness and shared vulnerability. Rachel's transformation into a mother who listens, trusts, and learns from her daughter deepens the emotional foundation of the story and signals true healing. Sophie's abusive father is arrested, and she's placed with a loving foster family, tying up the darkest threads of the narrative and showing that rescue and redemption are possible for everyone. Willow Creek Park bloomed bright and wide beneath a gentle spring sun, banners strung between trees reading Second Chances Day. For the first time in months, Emma's breath came easy as she walked the gravel path, Nova at her side, Hope prancing just ahead. The Brooks family arrived early, Rachel carrying a basket of cookies for the volunteers, Caleb with a stack of Emma's drawings, and Emma in a new yellow dress she'd picked herself. Sophie spotted them before they reached the main stage and ran, arms wide, her new foster parents trailing behind. She crashed into Emma with a hug so fierce it left them both giggling, Hope yapping at their feet. Nova wagged her tail, nuzzling Sophie's hand. The months since the rescue had changed all of them, bones still mending, trust still slow, but their eyes were clearer, the darkness faded from their edges. A crowd gathered, survivors and neighbors, police officers and volunteers, the animal shelter team, and families who'd adopted rescued dogs. Rachel scanned the crowd and saw Mrs. Halloway, the neighbor who'd first called animal control, the vet who'd saved Nova's life, and the officers who'd stormed the factory. Each wore a look of relief and gratitude, pride tucked in their smiles. The ceremony began with speeches, thank yous, awards, words about courage and hope, but Emma barely heard them, nerves twisting inside her. When her name was called, Rachel squeezed her shoulder. Nova's leash looped gently in Emma's hand. Emma stepped onto the stage, heart fluttering. She looked out at the crowd, so many faces, all watching, and for a second her voice caught in her throat. But Nova nudged her leg. Hope barked softly, and Emma found her words. "I used to be scared all the time," she began. Her voice shook, but she kept going. "I thought if I was quiet, if I stayed invisible, nothing bad would happen. But I learned that being scared doesn't mean you can't do the right thing." Nova was scared too, but she stayed with me, even when everything was dark. Sometimes courage is just loving someone enough to help them, even when you're shaking. There was a hush, and then scattered applause. Emma saw Sophie crying, her foster mom's arm around her shoulders, and Rachel's face shining with pride. Nova gazed up, brown eyes bright, tail thumping the wooden stage. Rachel stepped forward, invited by the event's host, and took the microphone. She swallowed, her hand trembling. "I used to think protecting my children meant telling them not to worry. I thought being a parent meant always having the answers. But Emma taught me something different, something bigger. She taught me that real protection starts with listening. Even when their fears don't make sense, even when the world tells you it's nothing, listen. Because sometimes those little voices, those animal instincts, are our first warning signs. They're the reason we're all standing here today." She reached down, drawing Emma and Nova close. "The world doesn't need perfect people. It needs people who listen, who care, who act, even when it's hard." The crowd clapped louder, a standing ovation rising as Sophie rushed up and threw her arms around Emma. The two girls hugged Nova and Hope, who barked and squirmed, overwhelmed by the attention. Then came the awards. Sophie was given a medal for bravery. Her eyes went wide and she whispered, "For me?" The crowd cheered louder, and Nova was fitted with a special collar and medal, "Hero Dog," engraved in shiny letters. Emma grinned, her heart light for the first time in a long, long while. After the speeches, families mingled. The rescued dogs wore new bandanas and chased each other across the grass. Survivors and volunteers shared stories, some teary, some hopeful. Rachel found herself beside Officer Turner, the one who'd believed Emma's story first. "I wish I'd listened sooner," Rachel admitted. "I'll never make that mistake again." Turner nodded. "Kids know things we forget to notice. Dogs, too." A group gathered around Emma, asking about Nova and Hope. "How did you know?" a reporter wanted to know. Emma shrugged, glancing at Nova. "She told me," Emma said simply. "Not with words, but with the way she looked at me. I just listened." Later, as the sun sank and families drifted away, Emma, Rachel, Nova, Hope, and Sophie lingered at the edge of the park, watching fireflies blink in the grass. Rachel crouched beside Emma, her voice low. "I'm so proud of you," she said. "You were brave in ways I never knew how to be. I promise, I'll always listen, even when I'm scared, even when it's hard." Emma smiled, leaning into her mother's hug, Nova's head warm beneath her hand. "We're all a little broken sometimes," Emma whispered. "But we're stronger together. That's what Nova taught me." Sophie nodded, slipping her hand into Emma's. "And Hope, too." For a while, they sat in silence, the lessons of the last months echoing in the night. Listening is an act of love. Empathy is the bridge between fear and hope. Second chances aren't just for the wounded, they heal communities. And the world changes when someone believes in you, listens to you, or stands by you, even if that someone has 4 legs. As fireflies danced, Rachel stood and addressed the dwindling crowd one last time. "We're all broken, all scared sometimes. But together, with open ears, gentle hands, and the courage to speak up, we help each other step out of the shadows. That's how we change the world, one voice and one paw at a time." The applause was soft but real, carrying through the dusk as Emma, Sophie, and their animal family walked home beneath the stars, hearts lighter, burdens shared, and shadows behind them for good. Rachel's public admission, her transformation from doubt to belief, brings a cathartic reckoning and a model of humility and love to the entire community. Emma and Sophie stand together, bonded by trauma and healing, their shared story inspiring hope and courage in others. Nova and Hope's presence on stage shows the profound power of animal companionship and the true meaning of second chances. The community's public reckoning and Emma's story spark a cultural shift. Listening, empathy, and intervention become core values, showing that the smallest voice or the quietest whimper can save lives when someone is willing to hear it. Sunrise found Maple House golden and new, the front porch bathed in light so gentle it seemed to soften every rough edge the old home once had. Emma sat on the steps, knees hugged to her chest, a sketchbook balanced in her lap. Nova sprawled beside her, head heavy on Emma's thigh, breathing the deep, even breaths of a dog finally safe. Hope, fluffier now and always in motion, bounded after a butterfly in the dew-wet grass. On the bottom step, Sophie hunched over a drawing, tongue poking out in concentration, her foster parents' laughter floating through the open kitchen window. Rachel stood in the doorway for a long moment, watching the girls, her heart fuller than it had been in years. She sipped her coffee and tried to memorize the way the sunlight caught Emma's hair, the way Nova's tail thumped whenever Hope squealed, the hush of morning broken only by birds and soft giggles. It was so ordinary, and so extraordinary. After everything, peace had come not as a grand victory, but as a daily practice of hope. Emma turned the page and began to sketch. Her drawings had changed. The monsters of her nightmares were gone, replaced by heroes with big hearts and battered fur, children brave enough to run into darkness and return with the light. She drew Nova and Hope chasing butterflies, their bodies stretched in joy, not fear. She shaded in the old house, but this time every window was lit. "I used to only draw monsters," Emma said quietly, her pencil scratching. "Now I draw heroes." Rachel stepped outside, settling beside Emma, her arm resting across her daughter's shoulders. "That's because you found the heroes, Em. You helped make them." Emma's voice was thoughtful. "We all did. I think that's what healing is, isn't it? You can't do it alone. You need people, and dogs, and sometimes even a little bit of trouble. Rachel smiled, brushing a stray curl from Emma's forehead. You're right. Healing is a journey. Some days are easy, some are hard, but we don't walk it alone. Inside, the house hummed with life. Caleb and Sophie's foster parents made pancakes in the kitchen, the scent of maple syrup drifting out to the porch. Hope darted up the steps and collapsed at Nova's side, rolling belly up with trust that would have seemed impossible only months ago. Sophie set down her crayon and looked at Emma. Can we draw together forever? Emma grinned, bumping shoulders. As long as you want. Nova lifted her head, gaze tracking a line of sunlight that spilled across the yard. For a moment she looked toward the horizon, ears alert, body loose and content, a guardian finally at peace. Emma followed her gaze, letting her own heart expand to meet the new day. A knock sounded at the front gate. The mail carrier waved and left a bundle of letters, cards from the shelter, drawings from children who'd adopted rescued dogs, a certificate naming Nova Ambassador of Hope. Sophie squealed in delight, waving the medal at the dogs, who barked as if they understood every word. After breakfast, they gathered in the backyard. Emma presented Nova and Hope with new collars, bright, hopeful colors, handmade in secret. She clipped Nova's on, then Hope's, pressing her face into their fur. Thank you for saving me, she whispered. For saving all of us. Rachel hugged her from behind. You saved me too, Emma. You reminded me to trust, to listen, to love without conditions. They spent the day in slow celebration. Sophie's foster parents taught everyone how to plant sunflower seeds, turning the edge of the garden into a promise that summer would come. Caleb led a parade around the yard, Nova and Hope in tow, their medals jangling, laughter ringing through the air. As the sun began to set, Emma gathered everyone on the porch steps. She cleared her throat, her voice a little bigger than it used to be. I want to say something, not just for us, but for anyone who feels broken or scared or left out, Emma said, looking at her family and her friends, human and animal alike. When you're hurt, it's easy to hide, to think you don't matter or that you have to be alone. But Nova taught me, and Hope, and Sophie, and Mom, that healing isn't something you do by yourself. It happens when you let people see you, and when you're brave enough to see them, too. Secrets only hurt us when we keep them in the dark. But when we share them, even the worst ones, the light comes in. And with enough light, even old houses and old hearts can become home again. Rachel squeezed Emma's hand. That's beautiful, sweetheart. Nova barked once, and Hope howled, a tiny, triumphant sound. Night fell softly. Emma, Sophie, Nova, and Hope stayed out long after the sky went violet, drawing fireflies and dreams in the warm air. As the stars came out, Rachel turned to the camera, recording the moment for the YouTube channel they'd started together. Her voice, warm and strong, closed the story. If this story moved you, please like and follow our channel. And remember, the world changes when someone believes in you, listens to you, or stands by you, even if that someone has 4 legs. Be that light. Be that hope. The next hero might be you. The last shot was Nova and Hope curled together, heads touching, as Emma and Sophie drew a new future in the gathering light. Emma's realization that she can draw heroes now, not monsters, marks a profound internal shift from fear to hope, from victim to creator of her own story. Rachel's acceptance, her genuine, wordless presence with Emma on the porch, signals a complete family healing, grounded in shared vulnerability and newfound trust. Healing is collective, not solitary. Hope grows in the light of truth. Every compassionate act can be the spark that saves a life. With one final invitation to the audience, the Brooks family story closes in the dawn, their scars not erased but illuminated, proof that every ending is also a beginning.